Okay, thank you. So yes, my name is Vega. I am the CTO of HIT Foundation. We're based in Switzerland, and we are a blockchain-based marketplace for digital health data. Let me say a few words about why we're doing this. I think I can. Okay, yes. So data obviously is very important in the health sector. There are some estimates that it's worth as much as $500 billion. And then with everybody talking about AI and Internet of Things and mobile health, it's probably going to grow a lot faster in the years to come. Everything from patient care to clinical research, even insurance, depends on data. The problem is that, well, there's a lot of problems with data. One of them is that data is frequently siloed. Even in Switzerland, which has very advanced healthcare, a lot of doctors keep records on paper. So that makes it very hard for interoperability. Even when data is digital, individuals are suspicious about sharing it. Sometimes data gets shared without their consent. So there's a famous case recently of patients like me. I'm sure you've heard of them. They were a patient-to-patient communication platform, and a Chinese company wanted to buy them. And the US government stepped in and said that that was a national security issue. And they stopped that acquisition. So they were acquired by United Health instead. So obviously, security and privacy of medical data is critical. And so what we are trying to do is to provide the individual the right to control their own data and to benefit from it. And then the way we do that is we have a blockchain-based platform that allows individuals to see requests for data from researchers, public health organizations, et cetera, and then decide whether they want to share the data or consent to sharing the data, and then get a benefit for in form of cryptocurrency tokens for it. So the question is obviously, how much is that data worth? There are some estimates already based on real world data, like insurance companies that pay you for joining a health club, or if you can report your step count with a mobile application. People pay a lot of money to get DNA tests. So obviously the data has a lot of value, and I think conservatively we think that it's worth about 80 euros per year per patient on an average. And obviously in some cases it's more depending on where the patient lives, what conditions they have, et cetera. So how do we help the users realize this value? So in simple terms, think about the individual and then the clinical researcher or other organization that's trying to get access to their data. So on our platform, the individual downloads our app and sets up some basic metadata about themselves, where they live, how old they are. Eventually, we will add medical conditions to this as well. The important thing is this data lives on the patient's device. It's not transmitted to anybody, not to us, and not yet to the data seeker. The data seeker will create a query when they are looking for some data. For example, I might be looking for diabetic patients that live in the UK that are between the ages of 18 and 25. So I would create a query with those requirements, include that as an attachment to a blockchain transaction, and broadcast it to the entire world. On the patient's app, it monitors the blockchain, and when it sees a query that appears to match the user's profile, then the user gets a notification, and that tells them what data is being requested, by whom, for what purpose, and what is the reward in terms of the cryptocurrency tokens. The patient has the right to accept or deny the request. If they do accept, then they are sent to the portal where they either provide the data themselves, if it's self-reported data, or if it's data coming from like wearable devices, or they can provide electronic consent if the data is going from, say, their hospital or the lab to the clinical researcher. Once the data is received, we can store a proof of delivery also on the blockchain without sacrificing the data, the privacy of the data, and then the rewards are sent by the requester to the patient. There's other parties to our ecosystem, not just the information seeker and the individual, but the important thing here in this very busy chart is the individual is at the center of our platform, and they can both earn the tokens as well as redeem them for services in the health as well as the peripheral wellness sectors. So I can go through these real quickly, but these are some of the use cases that we're looking at. The revenue model that we have is that information seekers pay individuals when they agree to share their data, and on top of that, a percentage of that is then shared with all of the existing wallet holders in the system, and another percentage is shared with all the investors in form of a return on equity. Quickly talk about a few use cases. This is one that we ourselves have already implemented, where this is just simple surveys that we can do over our platform. When the patient responds to the surveys, then they receive the reward. The nice thing that we have observed here is, unlike traditional web-based surveys, we get a very high response rate, not just because of the tokens that the patients receive, but because these are early adopters that are interested in mobile health and curious about how the platform works. So far we have like a better than 50% response rate to some of our surveys that we have done. Another one that we're actively working on, a pilot, is where we have a large patient data record repository that they would like to monetize, but they need the consent from the individual, so they are using our platform as an electronic consent mechanism. And so in that setting, the information seeker first sets up the information exchange protocol with the repository, and then once they get the consent, the data is exchanged and the reward is sent to the user. Once the patient receives these tokens, cryptocurrency seems to be kind of scary and mysterious and risky to a lot of people. But in some of the pilots that we're working on, we're basically treating them as airline miles or discount coupons that they can just exchange for services within the same hospital, for example, where they are doing these pilots. And for a lot of patients who are not internet savvy or blockchain savvy, this makes a lot of sense. They can, for example, they can pay for massage therapy or fitness studio memberships, things like that. Another pilot that we're working on in Vietnam with the National Tuberculosis Program is trying to reward patients for checking in every time they take their medicine. So one of the problems they have with the tuberculosis medication is that patients start taking it, they feel better, and then they stop. So with the adherence program, they receive tokens every time they check in with the hospital and make sure that they are continuing their treatment. And finally, targeted information placement. So this is an area where we can both provide useful information, relevant information to the patient, but at the same time protect their privacy. And the way our platform does that is we broadcast targeted information to everybody, but the filtering happens locally on the device based on the patient's medical conditions or other metadata. And so you can receive information that's relevant to you without the advertiser even knowing who you are or where you are. And we can get a very high return on the ad dollars. So I have a few other slides, but I just want to quickly go over our team. So we have a fairly small team. About half of us are based full-time in Zurich, and the other half are remote all over the world. I myself have a software engineering background, but we have our chairman, Dr. Eberhard Scheuer, is a clinical psychologist, and then we have people with a lot of different backgrounds in both public health, marketing, and so on. We are seeking investments. We're fairly early stage, so we don't have a large number of active users yet. So we just launched earlier this year, and we're happy to talk to them.